lacks. Really, if the lower orders can't set us a good example, what is the use of them? They seem to have, as a class, absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Ah, my dear Ernest, what brings you up to town today?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring anyone anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary and polite society to have some slight refreshments at 5 o'clock. What have you been doing since Thursday?
Oh, I've been in the country.
What on earth do you do there?
Well, when one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are these other people you amuse?
Oh, neighbors.
Got nice neighbors up in your part of the Shropshire?
Oh, they're perfectly horrid. I never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Well, hello. Why all these cups? Why the cucumber sandwiches? Algy, why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
Yes, but I'm not sure Aunt Augusta will quite approve of you being here.
Well, might I ask why?
My dear boy, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
Well, I'm in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had said you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
There is nothing romantic at all in proposing. Why? It is very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic at all in a definite proposal. Why? One may be accepted. One usually is. And then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is in the uncertainty. If I ever get married, I will certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear boy. You see, the divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Please do not touch the cucumber sandwiches. They were ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
But you have been eating them this whole time.
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter. You need not eat it if you're going to eat it all. Now look, you dropped it. You act as if you're married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Well, why do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. Yet it accounts for the extraordinary number of young bachelors one sees all over the place. And in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
Yes, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, we must clear up the whole matter of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean by Cecily? Algy, what do you mean? I don't know anyone by that name.
Lane,
Yes, sir.
bring me the pocket watch Mr. Worthing left in the dining room last time he was here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say that you've had my pocket watch this whole time? Well, I wish to goodness that you had let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to the Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
Well, there is no good offering a reward now that it is found.
I think that's rather rude of you, Ernest, but really, it makes no matter, for now that they read the inscription inside, I find this isn't yours after all.
Well, of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you can't read what is written in it. It's very ungentlemanly to do so.
It is perfectly ridiculous to have a hard and fast rule about what one shouldn't read and what one should read. Half of modern culture is entirely dependent upon what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite aware of that fact, my dear boy. But I don't propose to discuss modern culture in private. It isn't very right. I just want my pocket watch back.
Yes, but this isn't your pocket watch. This pocket watch was given to you as a present from someone by the name of Cecily. And you said you don't know anybody by that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes. Charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells, I believe. Now just give it back to me, Algie.
Yes, but if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells, why does she call herself Little Cecily? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love.
Well, my dear boy, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall. Some aunts are, well, not tall. Surely that is a thing that an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think every aunt should be like your aunt, and that is absurd. Now just give me back my pocket watch.
Yes, but why on earth does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love, to her dear Uncle Jack. I have no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why any aunt, no matter her size, should call her own nephew her uncle, I really can't make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
Jack!
Yes.
You have always told me your name was Ernest. I have introduced you to everybody as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest.
Thank you.
You're the most earnest-looking person I've ever seen in my entire life. It's perfectly ridiculous you saying your name isn't Ernest. Here, it is on one of your cards. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I'll keep it in case you ever try to deny it to me, to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, if you want to know, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the pocket watch was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that still does not account for why your small Aunt Cecily calls her own nephew her uncle. Really, old boy, you'd much better have the whole thing out with at once.
My dear Algie, you talk exactly as if you're a dentist. It's a very vulgar thing to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
But that is precisely what they always do. Now go on. Tell me the whole truth. I may have mentioned I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist.
A Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that wonderful and incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to reveal to me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my pocket watch first.
Here. Now produce your explanation, and pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. The old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle out of motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
And where is that place in the country?
Well, that is nothing to you, dear boy. You're not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly, though, that it's not in Shropshire.
I had suspected that, for I've Bunburied all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. But go on, tell me, why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear boy, I do not know if you will be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. But when one is placed in a position of a guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much either to one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother by the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful of scrapes. That, my dear boy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
Well, that wouldn't be a bad thing at all.
I don't plan to debate literary criticism with you. Leave that to the people who haven't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you are a Bunburyist. You're one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean, Algie?
You have invented a very useful younger brother in order that you may come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid by the name of Bunbury. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable, for if it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I really have been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
But I haven't asked you to dine anywhere with me tonight.
I know, you are very careless about sending out invitations.
Well, then you had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta tonight.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do go, I'm always treated as a member of the family, and sat down with either no women at all or 2 In the third place, I know precisely who she will seat me with tonight. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. It is not very pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent. And that sort of a thing is enormously on the increase these days. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands in public is perfectly scandalous. It is simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know that you are Bunburyist, I want to talk to you all about it. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. In fact, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Ernest, and I strongly advise you to do the same with with your invalid friend with the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. For really, if it wasn't for Bunbury's a man who marries without knowing a Bunbury has a very tedious time of it. You don't seem to understand that in married life, 3 is company, and 2 is none.
Well, that, my dear young friend, is a theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home has proved in half that time. But I hate to be cynical, but there's so much beastly competition about. It's not easy to be anything these days. There she is. Only relatives and creditors ring in that Wagnerian manner. But if I distract her for 10 minutes or so in order that you might have the opportunity of proposing to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you at Willis's tonight?
Well, I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, yes. But you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about their mealtimes. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you're behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I always look smart, don't I, Mr. Worthing?
Well, you're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. That would leave no rooms for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we are a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Of course, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolyn, won't you come and sit here?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Lane! Lane! Why are there no cucumber sandwiches?
There were no cucumbers this morning in the market, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
Thank you, Lane.
Thank you, sir.
I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
Well, it really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I heard her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed colour. From what cause, I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I need hardly say this is a terrible bore and great disappointment, Aunt Augusta, but I've just received an urgent telegram that says poor Bunbury is ill, and I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you this week.
Well, I certainly hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he's accustomed to that.
Yes, but Bunbury is dreadfully ill, and the doctors say I should be with him.
It's very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice, as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season, when everyone has practically said whatever it is they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I shall go talk to Bunbury if he is still conscious. But I think I can guarantee that he'll be better by Saturday. The music, on the other hand, will be a grave tragedy, for, you see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. But if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But if you'll kindly join me in the other room, we can run over the program I've drawn out.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I am sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think that they are improper and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe it is so. Gwendolen, you will accompany me?
Certainly, Mamma.
The charming day it's been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever anyone wants to talk to me about the weather, I always feel they mean something else entirely, and that makes me so nervous.
Well, I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would consider it an admirable opportunity, Mr. Worthing. For you see, Mamma has a way of coming back into a room quite suddenly that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I've met you, I've admired you more than any girl that I have ever met since, well, I met you.
I'm quite aware of the fact, and I often wish that, in public at any rate, that you'd be more demonstrative. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has even reached the provincial pulpits, I'm told. But my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. From the moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
Oh, you really love me, Gwendolen.
Passionately.
Well, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest.
But your name is Earnest.
Well, yes, but supposing it was something else, do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Well, really, Gwendolen, I don't much like the name of Earnest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It's a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Okay, really, Gwendolen. I think there are lots of better names. I think, Jack, for instance. It's a charming name.
Jack!
Yes.
No! There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, have been more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Well, then I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There isn't time to lose.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you've led me to believe that you are not entirely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you've not proposed to me yet. The subject of marriage has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I would consider it an admirable opportunity, Mr. Worthing, and to spare you any possible disappointment, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Well, Gwendolen, darling.
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
Well, you know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you've been about it. I'm afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose to someone.
Well, darling, you're the only one that I've ever loved.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing was not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me? You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. But it is hardly a matter that she could be expected to arrange for herself. And now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolen, will wait for me below in the carriage.
But, Mamma...
In the carriage, Gwendolen.
Yes, Mamma.
Gwendolen, to the carriage. You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell, but I prefer to stand.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, though it is the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit that I do smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
Very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should either know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I knew nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I'm pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and would probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That's all that can be said about land.
Well, I own a country home with some land attached to it, of course. About 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't rely on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only ones getting anything out of it.
Country house?
Yes.
How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolen could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a home in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Oh, she is a lady considerably advanced in years and goes about very little.
Nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Did you mean the fashion or the side?
Well, both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
Well, I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us or come in the evening at any rate. Now, on to minor matters. Are your parents living?
No, Lady Bracknell. I seem to have lost both my parents.
Both? To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce, or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
Well, I'm afraid I really don't know, Lady Bracknell. You see, I said that I had lost both my parents, but it would be nearer the truth to say that, well, they seem to have lost me. I don't know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. The old Mr. Thomas Cardew, a man of a very charitable and kindly disposition, he found me. And he gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have in his pocket at the time a first-class ticket to Worthing. It's a place in Sussex, a seaside resort.
And where did this charitable gentleman who had a first-class ticket for this seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was found in there. Well, a somewhat large, brown leather handbag. It had handles to it. You know, it was a perfectly ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
Well, in the cloakroom at Victoria Station.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
Yes, Lady Bracknell, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I must confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that remind one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to? As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, has probably indeed been used for such purposes before now, but it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
Well, might I ask what you suggest that I do? I would need not say that I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce, at any rate, one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that, but I can produce a handbag at any moment. It's in my dressing room back home. I really think that should suffice you, Lady Bracknell.
Me? Sir, what has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Well, good morning.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say she refused you? I know it's the way she has. Gwendolyn is always refusing people. I think it is rather rude of her.
No, dear boy, Gwendolyn is right as a trivet, and as far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother, however, is perfectly unbearable. I've never met such a gorgon. I really don't know what a gorgon is like, but I'm quite sure she is one. At any rate, she is a monster without being myth, which I think is, well, rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algy. I should not speak of your relations in such a manner before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them. For you see, relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't the remotest instinct on how to live, nor the faintest clue on when to die.
Well, that is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, you always want to argue about things, so I won't argue about the matter.
That's precisely what things were originally made for.
Well, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. Algy, you don't think there's any possibility of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you?
Every woman becomes like their mother. That is their tragedy. No man does. That is his.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly clever, and about as insightful as any observation in civilized life should be.
Well, I am sick to death of cleverness. Everyone is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness that we had a few fools left in the world.
Oh, we do.
Well, really? I should very much like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The clever people, of course.
Oh, what fools!
Did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about you being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
No, what extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
Well, what about the profligate Earnest? What are you going to do about your brother?
Oh, by the end of the week, I shall have gotten rid of him. I'll say that he died abroad in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people are dying of apoplexy quite suddenly, aren't they?
Well, yes, but it's hereditary. It's the kind of thing that runs in families.
Well, what should I say he died of?
Would you much better say a severe chill?
You are sure that a severe chill is not hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Well, very well then. My poor brother Ernest is carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. There we go, that gets rid of him.
Yes, but what about Miss Cardew? I thought you said she was a little bit too much interested in your brother. Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that is all right. Cecily is not a silly, romantic girl, I am glad to say. She has got a capital appetite. She goes on long walks, and she pays absolutely no attention at all to her lessons.
I think I'd rather like to meet this Miss Cecily.
I will take very good care that you never do. She is excessively pretty, and is only just 18.
Did you tell Gwendolyn that you have an excessively pretty ward who's only just 18?
No, Cecily and Gwendolyn are extremely likely to be great friends. I'll bet you anything that you like that half an hour after they have met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after they've called each other a lot of other things. But really, old boy, we must be going, for you see, it is very nearly 7 o'clock.
Oh,
and if
it's
we want to get a good table at Willis's, we must go fast.
Algy, it's always very nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
I always am, that's why. But what should we do after we eat?
Well,
We
I
could go
don't
to
know.
the theater.
No, I don't like listening.
Well, what if we go to the club?
No, I don't want to talk to people.
Well, what if we trot around the Empire at 10?
Oh, no, I don't like looking at things. It is so silly.
Then what should we do?
Nothing.
It's awful hard work doing nothing. Though I don't mind work when there's no definite object of any kind at hand.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word!
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude toward life. I don't think you're quite old enough to do that.
I'm old enough to do whatever I please.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what the children have to say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I ever held of Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she could possibly do could alter my eternal devotion to you.
Well, dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination to me. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is good postal service, I suppose. It may become necessary that we do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Until Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn around now.
Thanks. I'd quite turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see you to your carriage, won't you, Miss Fairfax?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of cider, Lane?
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I shall go Bunburying. Pack my raincoats and extra Bunbury suits if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a nice day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
What a perfect pessimist you are.
I do my very best to give satisfaction, sir.
Well, there is a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl that I've ever cared for in my whole life. What on earth are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm merely anxious about poor Bunbury, that is all.
Well, if you're not careful, poor Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
Oh, I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
Oh, that is nonsense, Algie. You never do anything but talk nonsense.
That's all anyone ever does.
Cecily, surely such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Milton's duty than yours, especially when intellectual pleasure awaits you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it to page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It is now all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German as he leaves for town.
Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious that I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is rather to be commended in one so young. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I'm surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you certainly would. You know, German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not know if even I could produce an effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I do not know if I'd want to reclaim him. I'm not in favor of this modern mania of turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. But you must put away your diary, Cecily. I don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, dear Cecily, is the diary we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that haven't happened or couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel. I wrote one myself in my younger days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but how very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
The manuscript was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. But do your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
But I see Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble! This is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning, Miss Prism? You are, I hope, well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
I have not said anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope you're not being inattentive, Cecily.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
Well, that is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, then I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. It was drawn from the bees. Bees? Where is Mr. Worthing?
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
That's right. He does enjoy spending his Sundays in London. And well, I do not wish to bother Egeria or her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
It was a classical illusion drawn from the pagan authors. I will see you both, no doubt, at Evensong.
I think, Dr. Chospo, I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good. Cecily, in my absence, you will read your political economy. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Mr. Worthing has just driven over from the station. He's brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he wanted to speak with you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Worthing to come here, and I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I have never met a really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he will look like everyone else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I am more than unusually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest, my wicked cousin Ernest.
You mustn't think I'm wicked, Cecily.
If you're not, then you've certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked but being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Well, I have been rather reckless lately.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, I've been rather bad in my own small ways.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
Oh, it is much pleasanter being here with you.
I don't understand how you can be here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back until Monday afternoon.
That is a grave disappointment, for I am obliged to go up by the first train on Monday.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, I have a business appointment that I am obliged to miss in London.
Well, I know how important it is, of course, not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But I still think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to talk to you about your immigrating.
About my what?
You're immigrating. He's gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I would sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh. The accounts I've received of the next world and Australia are not particularly fond. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid that I'm not, but that is why I want you to reform me. You could make that your mission if you wouldn't mind.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind me reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
But that is because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Yes, but might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite without a buttonhole first.
A mahi chalniel?
No, I would sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think you should tell me that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Miss Prism's a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They're a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would like to catch a sensible man. I wouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone, Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand, a womanthrope never.
Well, I do not deserve such neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted to the present day. Besides, dear doctor, you do not seem to realize that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. Their very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive once he's married?
No man is ever attractive except to his wife.
And often I'm told not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can be depended on, ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing?
We did not expect you to. Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I had expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
Yes, Mr. Worthing. Oh, I hope this garb of woe does not bespoken some terrible calamity.
My brother?
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure?
Dead. Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Oh, Mr. Worthing, let me offer you my most sincere condolences. You at least have the knowledge of knowing you are the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Oh, my poor brother Ernest. He had many faults. But it is a sad, sad blow.
Were you with him in the end?
No, he died abroad in Paris.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so let him reap.
Charity, Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am susceptible to draughts. Will the internment take place here?
No, he seemed to have an expressed desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? Oh dear, I do not think that points to any serious consideration of the lost. You'll no doubt want me to make some allusion to this on Sunday. My sermon on man in the wilderness can be adapted to many occasions. I've preached it for festal days as well as distressing times. I've preached it for confirmations, christenings, harvest celebrations, days of humiliation, as well as festal days. In fact, the last time I preached it was in the cathedral for the prevention of discontentment among the upper orders. The bishop who was present was much struck by many of the analogies that I drew.
Dr. Chasuble, you've reminded me of something. You know how to christen, all right?
Mhm.
I mean, you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in the parish. I have often spoken to the poorer class on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
Is there a particular infant you would like christened, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was unmarried, was he not?
Oh.
Men of pleasure often are.
Yes, he was not married, but it is not for any child, dear doctor. I'm very fond of children, but the fact is, I would like to be christened myself this afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
Indeed I could, Mr. Worthing. What time would you like the ceremony to be performed?
Oh, about 5, if that would suit you.
Hold on. Haven't you been christened already?
Well, I don't remember anything about it.
but you have some doubts on the subject.
Well, I certainly intend to have. I don't know whether or not you think I'm a little too old now, or if it would be, in fact, viable.
Of course, the sprinkling as well as the immersion of adults and infants is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
Well, you need to have no such apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that's necessary, or what I would advise. The weather here is ever so changeable. What time should the ceremony be performed?
Well, like I said, about 5, if that
That's
would work.
right. That works perfectly. I have a similar ceremony at that time. Case of twins, born to poor Jenkins the carter, a most hardworking man.
Well, I don't see much fun in being christened along with other babies. It is so childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably. Now, oh dear, Mr. Worthing, I must be off. Now, please do not be so bowed down in sorrow. Things we often see as nothing more than bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I'm glad to see you back, but what horrid clothes you've got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily,
My child, my child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? You look as if you'd had a toothache. And I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room?
Well, who?
Your brother.
Oh, what nonsense! I haven't got a brother.
Don't say that. No matter how badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
Well, this is a joyous turn of events.
after we had all been resigned to his loss, his son return seems to me particularly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room? I don't know at all what it means. I think it's perfectly Oh, good heavens!
Brother John! I have come down from town expressly to say how sorry I am for the wicked ways I've lived in the past, but I intend to reform myself.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Well, nothing will induce me to take it. I think his coming down here is perfectly disgraceful, and he knows exactly why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There's some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so often. And surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he's been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Well, I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
I think Brother John's coldness to me is peculiarly painful. Especially this is the first time I've come down to visit him as a guest.
Uncle Jack, if you will not shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Fine. This shall be the last time that I ever do it.
It's wonderful to see such perfect reconciliation. I think we should leave the two brothers alone.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You've behaved wonderfully, my child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
Algy, you must get out of here. I don't allow Bunburying here.
Oh, that is ridiculous.
I have unpacked Mr. Worthing things in the room next to your own, sir.
His what?
His luggage, sir.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay for more than a week at this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Earnest has been called suddenly back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I have not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Well, your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never once interfered with my pleasures to the smallest degree.
Well, I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
I won't have you talk of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. It is ridiculous to be in mourning for a man who is staying in your house for a whole week as a guest.
You are certainly not staying with me as a guest or as anything else. You've got to leave by the 4:05 train.
I certainly won't leave you so long as you are in mourning. It'd be most unkind if I did. I would hope that if I were ever in deep distress, you would stay with me. I would think it most unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, but you mustn't be too long about it. I never saw someone take so long to dress with such little results.
Well, at any rate, that is better than being overdressed as you are.
If I'm occasionally a tad overdressed, I always make up for it by being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct is an outrage, and your presence in my garden is utterly absurd. However, you have got to leave by the 4:05 train, and I hope to goodness that you have a pleasant trip back to town. This bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it's been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I thought you were Uncle Jack. I merely came back to water the roses.
He's gone to fetch the dog cart for me.
Is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has just met. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope I shan't offend you, Cecily, if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every possible way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. Allow me to enter your remarks into my diary.
A diary? Might I see it?
No. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think that you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily?
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell her to come round next week, at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week, at the same hour.
I don't care about Uncle Jack. I don't care about anybody in the whole world. I love you, Cecily. You'll marry me, won't you?
You silly boy, of course. Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. There must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
But when was our engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or another. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day, I bought this ring in your name, and this is the bangle with the true lover's knot that I promised you always to wear.
They're very pretty. Did I give them to you?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given for your leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
But my own sweet Cecily, I have never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
Might I read them?
Oh, no. You would be far too conceited if you did. The 3 you wrote me after I'd broken off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
Was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all, Cecily. I am very much hurt indeed to hear you broke off our engagement, particularly when the weather was so charming.
Well, it would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it had not been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
Oh, you perfect angel.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again, will you, Cecily?
I don't think I could now that I have actually met. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But what if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name Algernon.
My own darling, I don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It's a rather aristocratic name. Half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy courts are by the name of Algernon. But you mean to say you could not love me if I was called Algie?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear I could not give you my undivided attention.
Your rector here is thoroughly practiced in all the rites and ceremonies of the church, is he not?
Oh, yes. Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. Of course, he has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him on a most important business.
Oh!
I shall be back before half an hour.
Seeing that we have been engaged for the last 3 months and have only just met, I feel it hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour.
I shall be back before you know.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal in my diary.
A Miss Fairfax has called to see Mr. Worthing.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Ask Miss Fairfax to come here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose one of the many elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in some philanthropic work in London. I don't like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew, what a very sweet name. Something tells me we're going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. And my first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this is a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You've heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Outside of the family circle, Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. And I believe that is just as it should be. I believe the home is the proper sphere for the man. Whenever a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. So, do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolen. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh no, I live here.
Indeed. Your mother or some female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Really?
My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh! He never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How very secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I am not sure, however, that the news inspires feelings of unmixed delight. Cecily, I'm very fond of you. I've liked you ever since I met you. But I am bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish you were, well, a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly.
Pray do. I feel that when anyone has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish you were fully 42, and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception, but even men of the most noble nature can find themselves susceptible to the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history supplies us with the most painful examples to which I refer. In fact, if it were not so, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say, but they have not been on good terms for a very long time.
Oh, that accounts for it then. And now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother before. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you've lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. But you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing that is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolen, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. The county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, there must be some slight error. For you see, Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post at Saturday the latest.
You are under some strange mistake. For you see, Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious. For you see, Mr. Ernest Worthing proposed to me yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you'd care to verify the incident, pray do so. I always bring my diary when I travel. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. I'm very sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any distress to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has found himself entrapped into some foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever entanglement my dear boy may have gotten himself into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me to be an entanglement, Miss Cardew? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is clear that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lead the tea, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Thank you.
Are there very many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? Well, I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden you have here, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to exist in the country, if anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
That is what the newspaper call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering from it just at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, I have been told. May I offer you some tea?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I met you, I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. And my first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
My own... Oh, a moment. May I ask, are you engaged to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily? No, of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must have been some misunderstanding, for you see, the gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh!
Here is Ernest.
Cecily.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens, to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could have put that idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you.
My dear Cecily, I felt there was some slight error. If you see, the man that is currently embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon? Oh!
Oh!
Are you called Algernon?
I can't deny it.
Oh!
Is your name really John?
I could deny it. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name certainly is John, and it has been John for years.
Oh! A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wronged Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, won't you?
There is just one question I would like to be permitted to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? It seems we are both engaged to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some slight importance for us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is a very painful thing for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time I have ever been reduced to such a position. I'm really quite inexperienced of anything of the kind. However, I may tell you both quite frankly that I have no brother Ernest, that I never have had a brother Ernest, and I certainly don't want a brother Ernest.
No brother at all.
None.
Never of any kind.
No, not one. Never of any kind.
Well, it seems that neither of us are engaged to anybody.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl suddenly to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
Certainly. Men are so cowardly, aren't they?
Well, this is the ghastly state of things you call bunburying, I suppose.
Yes, and quite a wonderful bunbury it has been too.
Well, I don't allow bunburying here, I told you. You must leave.
Oh, that is ridiculous. Every serious bunburyist knows that they may bunbury wherever they choose.
Serious bunburyist? Good heavens!
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about bunburying. What you are serious about, I haven't the faintest clue. About everything, I presume. You have an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded, and you won't be able to come down to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Algie. A very good thing it is, too.
Your brother's looking a little off color, isn't he, dear Jack? Guess you won't be able to come into the town as often as you used to. And not a bad thing either.
Well, as to your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I say that you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
As I can see no possible defense for your taking in a clever, brilliant, thoroughly experienced young girl like Miss Fairfax, to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen, that is all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
Well, there certainly is no chance of you marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't think there's much chance of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
That's not your business.
Of course it's not my business. If it were my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's own business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How you can sit there calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble, I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
One must always eat muffins in a very calm manner. Why? If one eats them agitatedly, the butter would get on their cups. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Well, I say it's not good of you eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
My dear boy, when I am distressed, I eat. Indeed, when I'm in truly great trouble, I refuse everything except for food and drink. At the present moment, I am eating this muffin because I am unhappy.
Well, that does not mean you should eat it in a greedy way.
I wish you would have the tea cake instead. I don't like the tea cake.
Well, I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you have just said it was perfectly heartless eating muffins.
I said it was heartless of you under the circumstances.
That may be, but the muffin is the same.
Algie, I don't want you here. Why won't you just leave?
You can't possibly ask me to go without having my dinner first. No one ever goes anywhere without their dinner, except for vegetarians, and they aren't people. Besides, I have just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 by the name of Earnest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I have already made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:30, and naturally, I will take the name of Earnest. Gwendolen would wish it, and we both can't be christened Earnest. That's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There is no proof that I ever was, and Dr. Chasuble, along with myself, think that I, in fact, never was. But it is very different in your situation because you have been christened already.
Yes, but I haven't been christened for years.
Yes, but you've still been christened.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can handle it. You, on the other hand, seem to be taking a rather large risk, for you can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely related to you was very nearly carried off in Paris by a severe chill.
Oh, that is nonsense, Algie. You are always talking nonsense.
Jack, you're at the muffins again. I told you I was particularly fond of muffins.
But I don't like tea cake.
Why on earth do you allow tea cake to be served to your guests, then?
Algie,
What
I don't
ideas you have
want
of
you here.
hospitality?
Algie, I don't want you here. Why won't you leave? Go away.
I haven't finished my tea yet. And I'm really enjoying this muffin.
The fact that they did not follow me at once into the house as anyone else would have done seems to show they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery.
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
We should maintain a dignified silence.
Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
My dearest Cecily, I love you. My heart must be assuaged. Think of us together. Think of all those lovely letters. Think of how we are engaged. Hey diddly da nonny nonny. Hey diddly da nonny noo. Tulu rye, alu alu rye. Hey diddly da nonny noo.
Gwendolyn, my darling, I adore you. Just give me one look back. Just a glance, just a peek. Things needn't be so bleak.
But remember, his name's Jack. Hey dilly da nonny nonny. Hey dilly da nonny noo. Tulu rye, alu alu rye. Hey dilly da nonny noo. You're the prettiest I've ever met.
Do you really want a man with all that debt?
We are engaged, it says so in her diary.
Well, it's too bad that your engagement is a made-up story. Well, try to forget about my name, dear. Though I don't wish to brag, I would be an ideal husband.
But don't forget his first house was an old handbag.
Well, this is just absurd.
She's my cousin.
She's my ward.
Hey dilly da nonny noo. Hey dilly da nonny nonny. Hey dilly da nonny noo. Tulu rye, alu alu rye. Hey dilly da nonny noo.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we should not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
But of course that I might have the opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True, in matters of grave importance, it is style, not sincerity, that is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have the opportunity of coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Well, can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is not the moment for German skepticism. Their answers seem quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. It seems to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I'm more than content with what Mr. Moncrief has said. His voice alone inspires absolute credulity.
So you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True. I had forgotten there are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
Oh, yes, I often speak at the same time as other people. You'll take the time from me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier, that is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, are you willing to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, are you ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
How absurd for us to talk of the equality of the sexes. Where matters of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling!
Gwendolyn.
Miss Fairfax,
Gwendolyn? What does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin. I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am pleased to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. However, you will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
And I, Lady Bracknell, am engaged to Gwendolyn.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now as regards Algernon.
Yes,
Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
Oh, no. Bunbury is somewhere else at the present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die?
Oh, I killed him this afternoon. I mean, Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Oh, Bunbury was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
My dear Aunt Augusta, you misunderstand. For what I mean is that Bunbury was found out. The doctors found out that he could not live, so he died. That is what I mean.
Mr. Bunbury seems to have had a great deal of confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I am glad, however, that he made up his mind to the last and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have finally got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That, Lady Bracknell, is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there's anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seem to me considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, may I ask if Miss Cardew is at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea there were any families or persons whose origin was, well, a terminus.
Well, Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Southwest, the Dorkington Park in the Surrey, and the Foreign in the Spifenshire, northbound.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
Well, I have carefully preserved the court periods of the court guidelines of the period, Aunt Augusta, and they are open to your inspection.
That is good. But are there any relations that she has?
Well, her messes are Markby, and Markby.
Markaby and Markaby, a firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I'm to be told that one of the Markabys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
So pleased to hear, Lady Bracknell. You will also be pleased to hear that I have in my possession certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, and the measles, both the English and German variety.
Ah, A life crowded with instant, I see. Though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I'm not myself in favor of premature experiences. Gwendolyn, the time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask you if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, only about £130,000 in the funds, that is all. So pleased to have seen you, Lady Bracknell. Please, have a pleasant trip back to town. It was so good to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000. And in the funds. Miss Cardew seems to me to be a most attractive young lady now that I look at her. Few girls of the present day have any really solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come here, dear. Pretty child, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair as though nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid offers a really marvelous result in a very brief space of time. Indeed, I remember recommending one to young Lady Lansing, and after just 3 months, her own husband did not know her.
After 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn round, sweet child. No, the side view is what I want. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points of our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. The chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn, and it's worn very high just at present. Algernon, there are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Miss Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest young girl ever. I don't care 2 pence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, of course you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. But I do not myself approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I never dreamed for a moment of letting that stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon. I'm not myself in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
Lady Bracknell, it pains me to have to interrupt you, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and as her guardian, she cannot marry until she comes of age without my consent. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say, an ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing but looks, everything. What more could one desire?
Well, it pains me to have to speak to you about your nephew, so frankly, but I don't at all approve of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible. He is an Oxonian.
Well, I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon, when I was in town on a very important question of romance, he obtained admission into my garden under the false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name, he drank, I've just been informed by my butler, my very last glass of cider, which I've been reserving specifically for myself. Continuing his disgraceful manner, he succeeded over the course of the afternoon alienating the affections of my only ward. And subsequently, he stayed to tea, wherein he devoured every single muffin. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he was perfectly well aware from the start that I haven't got a brother, that I never have had a brother, that I don't want a brother at all. I told him so this afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
Well, how extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell, but my decision is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
How old are you, dear?
Well, I am really only 18, but I always admit 20 when I go to evening parties.
You are perfectly right in making some slight alteration. No woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it will not be long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I do not see why your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any concern.
Lady Bracknell, it pains me to speak to you frankly yet again, but I must tell you that according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Cecily Cardew does not come of age until she is 35.
Well, that does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have, of their own free choice, remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbleton is an instance in point. To my knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40, which was, well, many years ago now. I see no reason why our dear Cecily should not be more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algy, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could. You know I could.
I know, I felt it instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I do like punctuality in others, even though I'm not punctual myself, but waiting even to be married is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait till she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say implies a somewhat impatient nature, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
Well, the matter is entirely in your own hands, Lady Bracknell. The moment that you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You will clearly understand that what you propose is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us have to look forward to.
That is not the destiny that I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can decide for himself. Come, dear, we have already missed 5, if not 6 trains, and to miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christenings? Sir, is that not somewhat premature?
But both of these men have expressed the desire for immediate baptism.
At their age? The idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he knew that that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand that there will be no christenings this evening?
I don't think it would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble, under the circumstances.
That is most displeasing. It savors the heretical views of the Anabaptists. Views that I've disproven in 4 of my unpublished sermons. But if your present disposition seems to be particularly secular, then I will go back to the church. In fact, I've been informed that for the past hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention Miss Prism?
I did indeed, Lady Bracknell. I'm going to visit her.
Pray, allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter may prove to be of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies, the very picture of respectability.
'Tis obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I'm a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She's nigh.
Dr. Chasuble! I was told you expected me in the vestry. I have been waiting there an hour and 3/4.
Prism? Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of a more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. But the plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day that you mentioned, a day that is forever branded in my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I also had with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction which I had written in my unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction for which I can never forgive myself, I placed the baby, I placed the manuscript in the bassinet, and the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where it is you placed that handbag that contained that infant.
In one of the larger cloakrooms of the London rail station.
Which station?
Victoria, the Brighton line!
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, wait for me.
If you will not take too long, I'll wait here for you all my life.
What do you suppose this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Tospel. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered a thing.
Uncle Jack is strangely agitated.
Your guardian seems to be of a most emotional nature.
This noise is very unpleasant. Sounds as if we were having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
It stopped now.
I wish you arrived at some conclusion.
This suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It appears to be mine. Here is the injury it received from the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus, an incident that occurred in younger and happier days. And here on the lining is the stain from the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred in Lamington. And here on the lock are my initials. I had forgotten that in an extravagant mood I'd had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I'm delighted to have it restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Well, more is restored to you than just this handbag. I was the infant that you placed in it.
You,
Yes, Mother!
Mr. Wood! I am unmarried.
Unmarried? Well, I must admit, this is a serious blow. But who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered so gravely? Cannot repentance wipe out a single act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Wood! There is some error! There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but could you please inform me of who I am?
I am afraid that the news I have to give you may not altogether please you. You are the son of my sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Elder? Brother? Well, I knew I had a brother! I always said I had a brother! Cecily, could you you have ever doubted that I had a brother? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. And Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother.
Cousin!
Oh, you've got to treat me with more respect, Algie. You've never treated me like a brother in your whole life.
I tried, I really did, but I was rather out of practice. I will continue to try, though.
My own, but what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you've become someone else?
I'd quite forgotten that point. I suppose your decision, however, is unalterable?
I never change, except in my affections.
Your common sense is invaluable, Gwendolyn.
Well, Miss Lady Bracknell, at the time when I was deposited in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Well, every luxury that money could buy, including christenings, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Well, then I was christened. But what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Well, being the eldest, you were naturally christened after your father.
Well, yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the general's Christian name was. But I am sure he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years, and that was the result of the Indian climate and marriage and indigestion, things of that nature.
Algie, you can't recollect what our father's Christian name was, can you?
My dear boy, we were never on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
Well, his name would appear in the army records of the period, I suppose.
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. I have no doubt that his name would appear in any military directory.
Well, the army records of the last 40 years, I hear. These delightful records should have been my constant study. Let's see. Malum, Moxbum, Magley. Ew, what ghastly names they have. Miggs, Mogby. Ah, here we go. Moncrief. All right. 1849. Captain, Lieutenant, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel. Generals, 1869. Christian names. Ernest John. Well, I always told you my name was Ernest, didn't I? I mean, of course it's Ernest. Naturally, it is Ernest.
Yes, I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name. I recall that was his name.
My own Ernest. I felt from the start you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, darling, it is a very painful thing for a man to find out quite suddenly that he's done nothing but speak the truth his whole life. Can you ever forgive me?
Of course I can, for I feel you are sure to change.
Oh, my own one.
Letitia!
Friedrich!
Cecily, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.
Well, thanks so much for being here tonight. I hope you enjoyed the play. The cast did a great job at the play. And at Faith, our mission is with the word to the world. And we do that through whether it's Bible classes or we do that whether it's through extracurricular activities like this. And it's a blessing to see our students give themselves over to serving and doing things that the Lord has gifted them with and equipped them with in order to bring the word to the world. And so we're thankful for that. If you have any questions about what it would look like to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, I would encourage you to talk to any of these students here tonight. They would love to sit down and share that with you. If you have questions about Faith Baptist Bible College, talk to any of these students as well. They'd love to tell you about the school and their mission and what we're here for. Let's thank the drama department one more time. I'd have our director, Alyssa Hathcock, come up.
Could we have, if you were involved, it takes so many people to do this. If you were involved at all in sets or costume or anything else, stage crew, if you guys can come out, can you just stand? I'd like to give you guys a round of applause. Could we also have Lexi Huggins and Alyssa Rogers come up? They were our other two directors. This was a collaboration. We had Lexi and Alyssa have been amazing. We've had so much fun with this group of people. They have been truly the best to work with. You guys, we did a whole show tonight. Praise the Lord. All that I could think about when I was thinking about tonight was what a gift this is to be here with this group of people. This was not guaranteed. The Lord did not owe this to us. He has allowed us to be able to perform for you tonight. So we're very thankful that He's allowed us to do that. And we love being able to perform for you and perform for the Lord. This has been a really special show for me to get to direct and to direct with these two. These are two of my really close friends. So we've had a lot of fun putting this together. A lot of what you see on stage is actually a combination of Lexi and Alyssa and all of these students. They came to rehearsal. Well, I almost said every night. We didn't have rehearsal every night. That would be a lot. I don't think they could put up with me that much. But they came Tuesday and Thursday nights every night for 2 to 3 hours and had the best attitudes. They had so much excitement. A lot of what you're seeing is just their improv and their brilliance. Some of you, this is your first show, and I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of all of you. So thank you for being here. Some of you came back after last night. So thank you for being here to support them. We're just really thankful to be standing here tonight. They will be available in about 5 minutes. I need to talk to them and give them instructions one more time. So they will be out, probably go out that way and stand down there, okay? And they'll be available if you want to say hi and take pictures, and please congratulate them and just tell them they're amazing. I love you guys so much. I've had so much fun with all of you. I'm really proud of you. Thank you for just being wonderful. Let's give them another round of applause.
Would you join me as we pray as we close? Father, we're thankful for your grace and goodness towards us and the love that you have shown us in the person of Jesus Christ. And thank you for the skills, the gifts, and the abilities that you have given to each one of these individuals here tonight, and for the performance that they have given us, and just what a wonderful joy it is just to be here in fellowship with Jesus Christ and to know the gifts that you've given these people and to be able to enjoy them and celebrate who you are. Thank you for keeping us safe through the storm and watching over us. Lord, give us safety as we travel home tonight. And thank you for everyone who's come out here tonight. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen. Yeah. You could clap for them one more time.